with Cody Tucholke, class of 2014. Cody, is it crazy now? You've been more than a decade from being a Jaguar student. How time flies.
Yeah, don't remind me. Having a couple kids and being in here with all the renovations here at the high school, it certainly feels bittersweet at times to see how much some things have changed, but what stayed the same is just the commitment to this program, the number of people coming in to do interviews. Yeah, it's certainly brings back a lot of great memories.
Growing up, when did you realize that becoming a football player at Jefferson was something that you really wanted to strive for?
Yeah, I grew up with my dad playing football, and around the time that the Bloomington youth program would take off, so I actually missed third grade. I don't know what happened there. I guess we just didn't sign up. And then in fourth grade when I did, I knew in fourth grade I wanted to play football. I always enjoyed it. My dad pushed me in that way, was involved as a coach. And I think something that was special, at least realizing as a young player, is how often Jefferson coaches and players made their presence seen at youth events. So it's just always in my mind, the assumption was that I'm going to keep doing this through high school. And I think in no small part that's just due to the fact that the high school program would make their support and presence known at the youth events.
So talk about that a little bit more, just seeing all the different coaches that were attending, whether it be games or practices, did that just kind of reinforce, maybe even if they didn't talk to you personally, the idea of, okay, this is a Jaguar coach and they're coming to watch me, so I'm on maybe a path to becoming one of those players at some point?
Yeah, I think like they would show up to some of the maybe some of the initial events, especially like the punt, pass, and kick, the initial scrimmages that we'd all have, or the whole of youth BAA, Bloomington Athletic Association football would show up, and I would see the high school players there, the coaches there. And I think that was like in the back of your mind as a young kid, like these people are larger than life, and then when they're there, quite literally larger than you, and then also you're wanting to impress them to be like, I'm coming up into this program, I would like to be doing this someday. I think the fact that they made themselves known was great. And I remember myself, like some of the current players would volunteer to come to practices with the youth program, and I remember doing that myself. And I think that was when they're there and you're receiving instruction can be really exciting, but then also to try to make yourself known within the program, it was a great way to just implant it in your head, like this is the next step. The next step is you're growing as a player to do this one day. I think it was such a natural sequence.
What do you remember about your first varsity game as a Jaguar? You've gone through all the ranks of youth football, and now you're finally there, I don't know if it was home or away, but you've got that Columbia blue jersey on. What do you remember about that first game?
Yeah, I remember it wasn't a good thing for the program at the time because it meant I was a sophomore. I'd been called up to do special teams, and it was a game that we weren't doing so well in, so it was the opportunity for me to play. But I remember just going in, and I was like, holy smokes, these guys can run and hit. This is much more intense than the sophomore level I was playing at up to that point, and JV a little bit. And I remember that was really humbling. Actually doing that for the first time was like, am I gonna be at that level as a junior and a senior? It was really unnerving to see how fast and big those guys hit. But I think obviously that first experience was exciting. To do that with us, also some of my other fellow sophomores, was something for us to relive together and get a lot of resolve going into the off seasons to, some of that comes naturally just as you grow, but also there was a big, I would say at that time, big push within the program for more and more players to be involved in the off-season lifting program. And the coaches, especially Coach Carlson, making themselves known at those. The expectation was to be there, and the coaches would show up to, in some ways, ensure that players were showing up, but also just to see the progress and the effort that was being put in. So those first experiences really motivated me in those off-seasons to get bigger, get faster, get stronger, because the first time was pretty overwhelming.
Who were some of your fellow sophomores that you kind of came up with and got to play together at the varsity level for the first time as just 10th graders?
Yeah, so one was Austin Hilgert, who he was actually already starting on the varsity team at that point. He was played center, and I know he went on to play Division II football, and was by far the best offensive lineman that we had in our class. He was already starting as a sophomore and well deserving of it. And then some of us who played that sophomore year, I remember Cole Ansel playing. I don't think he played very much going into senior year, but I don't remember if he went out that year. But I remember as a sophomore, he and I getting that opportunity to play on special teams. At least that particular game. We didn't do as much the rest of the year, but we had a pretty small cohort that sophomore year, and there was a lot of recruiting going into junior and senior year to get more guys to play. So, that sophomore experience was a bit unique in that sense. Some guys that didn't end up playing moving forward, and then some guys who started playing again as seniors. It was a different experience.
Let's talk about some of the coaches that were a part of Jefferson football during your time. It's a unique time in a young person's life, from that 9th grade to 12th grade journey, where not only you grow a lot, right? You mentioned that you're wondering, these guys are big and fast, and all of a sudden you're a senior and you're eventually bigger. But it's an influential time in a young person's life. So, who are some of those coaches that really made an impact on who you ultimately are now as an adult?
Yeah, I focusing a little more on the junior and senior year, just because I would see those coaches so much more often in the off season and at trainings, and spending a lot of time with them in season. I remember Coach Pierscala was new to our program when I was a junior, and I think he just brought a lot of excitement and tenacity and competition to the defensive side of things. I thought he was really a great coach for someone like me who primarily played defense. That was we played a 3-5-3 defense, and so I was playing the outside kind of linebacker position. And he brought a lot of fierceness, excitement to that experience as a junior, and as a senior, seeing him. For me, he was most impactful just because I spent the most time with him as a linebacker and on our defensive side of things. But also Nick Zilka being present, working with a lot of the defensive linemen. So as a defensive player, seeing him plenty. I also saw him a lot with basketball. And then our Coach Carlson, I would say, showed a lot of interest in the defense and very involved in that as the head coach my junior and senior year. Those are the ones I primarily interacted with, and I think what I always appreciated about those coaches and that experience was how much it was a unique blend of, I think there was a lot of fun that came to playing the game, a lot of wanting to know us as students and as people, but also as players. There was some fun, some levity brought to the game, but also a seriousness in the sense that they did expect the best from us and were not afraid to call that out of us if they sensed that we weren't bringing our best. We weren't either mentally focused or being mentally tough, or physically were not doing what was required or not taking care of ourselves to show up in the best ways in practices or in games. I just remember those years being so fun for me because of how those coaches approached the game, and I even think who I am as an adult a lot of times rests on those experiences in high school of thinking about what mental preparedness and mental toughness and physical preparation look like. There are so many things I could think of as an adult I might have given up on or not persevered through that because of my experiences in sports, and especially football, the unique nature of how physical it is, that these coaches brought so much to that experience for me that helped me as a player and even beyond that into adulthood.
Do you have any fun or unique stories that stand out, whether it could be something lighthearted off the field or in the locker room, or something that sticks into your mind that might be a good memory to share?
Yeah, I think a more general memory was weightlifting. I guess I don't know how prevalent that was amongst older generations. From my perception, it seemed like around our time, there was a lot bigger focus on students lifting in the off season and having a structured program for that. And that was my sophomore year is when Jag Power showed up, which was the official kind of program put on by Jefferson athletics in general, but especially the football team really embraced it wholeheartedly. Coach Carlson really pushed for us to be doing that. I just remember so many mornings in the summers, and sometimes during the season, but mostly in the summers, like 5 days a week, going to this weightlifting program and seeing all the guys I'd play football with putting in time together in there. So there was a lot of maybe banter about how much people could lift and joking with each other on that, showing up, working out. I remember my friend Jake Schubert kind of establishing himself as a leader and being named as a captain because of his effort in the off season from junior to senior year in the weight room. And then in games like my junior year, we'd had a pretty tough season. We didn't win any games my junior year. So going into senior year, there's in a sense kind of a renewed hope for my class to be able to win some games. And so we had some really great start to the season with playing Kennedy, who also was coming off a bad year, to really come down to the wire and beat them in a game where I'd blocked an extra point, and it came down to a 1-point victory. That felt really good. The next game, going in and beating Apple Valley in a homecoming, that they had picked us for their homecoming game, and for me, actually a fun memory now is my current wife went to Egan, so she was at that game. She wouldn't have known who I was, but I like to joke with her that I ruined her senior homecoming, even though she didn't necessarily care at the time. But and then for us, like having a better than expected season going, and also winning against Apple Valley. That was Apple Valley, and then we also beat Egan for their homecoming. They had scheduled us, and that was where my wife went. Memory that stuck out was my friend Peter Knutson, who he'd actually played soccer his whole life up until senior year, and decided that his odds of playing football as a receiver would do better than where he was at with his soccer playing. And he was a great addition to our team. Caught a Hail Mary at halftime against Egan when we were playing that game, and that game came down to a 1 score. So him joining our team, being a receiver, catching a Hail Mary at halftime, proved crucial to winning that game. And I know Pete was a huge core to how well our offense functioned that year to win some games. Those ones that stick out to me. And then even our section playoff game, we again played Apple Valley, and that was tough because that one also came down to them kicking a field goal, one that I felt like even the ball went like, I almost had a chance to block it, so that sticks in my head. And I was like, that was my last time getting to wear shoulder pads and play football. So there's some of that in my head of like what we could have maybe done if we'd won that game. That, that's one play, but it was a 1-score game, so there's many opportunities that ways that things could have gone differently. But those stick out to me, is that we had a better than expected season, had a great run in sections, and wondering what could have even come from that, but just how much I took away as a player that season, how much of our effort in the offseason went into having a season that was above expectations. That'll stick with me forever. And I still have that scene in my mind of the last time taking off shoulder pads, and even thinking in the moment, this might be the last time I get to do that. That was a special, sad moment at the time, but a special moment to realize how much work had gone into that season and leading up to that moment.